Today I'm going to be learning about Sweden by watching this video. It's called 11 Myths About Sweden That Are Completely False. So yeah, interested to see what these myths could be. You can tell me whether you think they're false or not, or maybe they are true in some places or sometimes. Let's watch.
Hey, my name is Saga, I am from Sweden, and today we're going to talk about 10 myths about Sweden and Swedish people that take our time. Number 1 is of course that none of us have platinum blonde hair, and most of us don't even have blonde hair. The truth is that in Sweden, most of us dye our hair or highlight our hair to look blonder to fit in with this crazy norm. In fact, most of us don't get any much blonder than this. Although a lot of us are born with white hair, it gets darker as we age. For example, I was born with white hair, my dad was born with white hair, and his hair even turned out to be black when he got older. Number 2 is...
So what? I know that it's obviously not going to be true that like all Swedes have blonde hair. I guess that's just a stereotype, of course, but do a lot of Swedish people dye their hair? Is that male and female just to make it look blonder? Is that a thing or not?
Political. We are not a socialist country, no matter what you might have heard. There seems to be some confusion about this on the internet and in America, my friends. We are technically a social democracy. However, our politics are changing over the years. But look it up, it's completely different and it's way better. Number 3, I know this one might not be technically accurate, but I think it sort of is. We're not that good at English. So apparently when I looked this up, Swedish people do really well on English proficiency tests, and we score way higher than some other non-English native speakers. However, as someone who's married to a native English speaker and bringing him home to my country, communication is not nearly as easy as it may seem. A lot of people don't feel confident in their English abilities and therefore won't really speak English, although they can speak it perfectly fine. However, you'll see people on holiday be way better at English because after a few beers, we tend to loosen up. Number 4.
Yeah, I think that's normal for any country where English isn't like the first language. I think it's probably not expected that they're completely fluent, but yeah, from what I've seen and heard and read and things, like Sweden, obviously it says they're the second highest outside of any English-speaking country. Yeah, I would imagine it's a very high level, even more so than some British people I know.
Is the myth that gets on my nerves the most, and that is we're not having sex all the time. Apparently because of more nudity and a more liberal approach to nudity in films, in the 60s, Sweden has earned this global reputation as a sex-crazy country. But the problem with this myth is that it actually has severe consequences. So much so that when I was younger and traveling abroad, I would actually say I was from Norway and not from Sweden to avoid any unwarranted attention from men. So statistically speaking, we're not any crazier than any other country in the EU, and we do far less crazy things than people in the US. So I think this myth should be completely and utterly abolished. The 5th myth.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. Like, is that a thing? Like these older movies, did they create like a reputation or image outside of Sweden? Yeah, I don't know anything about that the movie scene or anything like that. So yeah, what are some good Swedish movies actually? But yeah, have you seen that before? That's a shame that she felt like she had to change her nationality when she was telling people. But yeah, I don't feel like I've heard that
take our time is that we're not all depressed all the time. Maybe this comes from all the focus on SAD, seasonal affectional disorder, and how incredibly dark and depressing Sweden is in winter. We don't get a lot of sunlight in winter, so yes, depression is definitely increasing in the population during the winter months. And compared to some other countries, for example, Finland and the US, our suicide rate is still lower than theirs. So it's not the highest in the world as Google and some other people may suggest. Number 6, something that I remember hearing from my friends in the US was that we didn't have freedom of speech, but that is a myth. Do we always have to get political? Yes, we do, because I am Swedish and we talk about all of this in the open, even often with strangers. So Sweden does have freedom of speech, but we also have rules to protect people and groups of people that are especially vulnerable, which means you can't harass people usually, but you can use your freedom of speech to advocate for yourself and others and your cause. Not to mention that the police will protect you as a citizen whilst you do this in case anyone else would try to hinder your freedom of speech. With the most recent example being that you can burn absolutely any religious book anywhere that you want as long as you're not physically harming other people. So yes, that is our freedom of speech. Number 9, we're of course continuing on the political path because I find it quite interesting, especially living abroad and hearing all these myths about Sweden all the time. So number 9 is that lockdowns actually weren't a choice. In the Swedish constitution, we have the freedom to move freely in our country. This means that the constitution actually protects our freedom to move freely in the country and have some other rights as well, with something or a concept that we like to call responsibility for freedom. And although no one's talking about this right now, there's been some absolutely outrageous articles here in New Zealand and Australia where I've been for the last 4 years that I needed to address this. Number 8 is my favorite because it's super awkward, and that is we're not Switzerland. Now you might not think this is a big deal, right? Switzerland, Sweden, Europe, Denmark, Norway, Finland, who cares, right? And yes, I don't really care that much apart from the fact that it's so darn awkward. So many times I've had conversations, even like on dates, which makes it double awkward because then you just can't continue the date. But I've met people who've said things like, oh my gosh, it's so cool that you're from Sweden. I've always wanted to go. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And then we have a conversation and suddenly they say something like, oh, so what language do you speak? Do you speak Swiss? This is the first hit. And that is fine. We all make mistakes. We all say weird things, especially when we're nervous or with new people or speaking about things that we don't know that much about. So I'm happy to correct them and we go along. But then the problem is that these people seem to persist saying facts about my country that are completely untrue because they are about Switzerland. Why not just stick to realizing that maybe you said the wrong thing and you don't know, and just remain silent about this topic for the remainder of this conversation? But no, people don't do this in my experience. Then they will start talking to me about chocolate, about cheese, about mountains, and about lakes and mountains, all things that Switzerland is incredibly famous for. This makes it obviously super, super awkward because do I correct them a second time or do I just ignore it and keep on going? But what if I want to be friends with them? Then I sort of have to correct them, right? So this one is mainly because it's so awkward and I would much rather prefer to not have these weird conversations where then the person feels super bad but somehow still keeps going. Number 9 is
that one, yeah, surprises me. Of course, I've seen that advert from the Swedish Tourism Board before that it was playing on this misconception of Switzerland and Sweden. But for me, I never knew it was such a big deal. Like, I never actually even knew it was a thing. Obviously, being from Britain, I'm guessing there's like a clear distinction between the two countries. So I would never know, even like the most uneducated person from Britain would confuse those two countries. I feel like there's not much that's similar. So yeah, maybe it's people from like the other side of the world. I don't know what would confuse them again. It's just two very different countries. Maybe it's just purely that they both start with SW. But is that a big enough reason? And I would have thought it would have been maybe more like Americans, but she's saying people in New Zealand, I think, or something like that. So quite surprising. Tell me if you've ever had anybody talk to you like that and have confused the two countries.
The fun one, and that is the myth that we're not good at business. Some super successful things that's come out of Sweden is of course things like Bluetooth, Minecraft, Spotify, and Volvo, and these are quite big brand names. But some things you might not know are from Sweden is, for example, Asa Abloy, which is the key company. Most likely you have a key card or a key from them. And the second one is Tetra Pak. If you're drinking plant milks or boxed juices or any liquid in a paper box, then it's most likely from Sweden. Number 10, here I go political and adult again, but this is so important because this is what makes Sweden unique and what makes me so happy to be part of this country. And that is our rule about prostitution. The myth is that prostitution is not illegal in Sweden. At least not in the way you may think. So this is false. I believe we have one of the best prostitution laws in the world. In Sweden, it is illegal to buy sex, but it is legal to sell sex. This rule protects the women, the vulnerable, and the children of our society while still being able to target predators in our society. Number 11, the myth that went viral quite recently is that we didn't sit in our room waiting for our friends to finish dinner. But we sort of did. In Sweden, when you have young kids, food is very important. And my family and every one of my friends' family would cook dinner from scratch every night and eat around 5 p.m. So after school finished at 3, you'd go home to your friends. Now, what happened if your parents were a little bit late or if they were gonna pick you up at 5:30 and your friends were having dinner at 5 p.m. Well, then sometimes you'd wait for them to finish eating because you wouldn't want to eat there because A, you wouldn't want to use the resources and put strain on that other family to cook your child more food, and B, you would want the child to eat the food you're preparing in your home because of routines, structures, and everything like that. However, this rule was never set. Sometimes I ate with my friend's house, sometimes I didn't. It all depends on the situation. But nowadays, I think this doesn't really happen anymore. So those were 11 myths about Sweden that I think needs to be debunked and that I think take our time.
Yeah, that was good. Again, like that one I've heard, I seen it go viral on like some social media. I don't know if it was like Twitter, X or something else, but it was like talking about Sweden and how families won't cook for other kids and things like that, and then getting people from other countries around the world like saying like, oh, how can they not take care of the kid? And it's like, yeah, again, like people like, yeah, again, like don't really think critically these days and can't really think too in depth about why the reasons it might have that and that it might not apply to the full country and like all this sort of thing. So yeah, I feel like that's a good one to debunk because I mean, probably shouldn't have to debunk things like that because a lot of people around the world not like don't actually take the care and the time to find out exactly what the truth is, but I think it's still good to hear. And yeah, like I feel like that's quite an interesting video, definitely. Some things I hadn't heard of even being a myth about Sweden for sure. A couple of them, yeah. But you can tell me, yeah, are these applicable or not? What do you think about hearing things like this? Have you ever met someone who's peddled any of these myths or talked to you about them or tried to say they really happen, anything like that? I can imagine it would be quite annoying, yeah, but you can tell me what you think in your own experience with them. Thanks.